100 Tolkien-esque pages describing the history of the cup and who held it.
Yeah. And people didn't win very often.
Not sound.
No. Oh, that's
Camera 1 recording.
It sounds wild.
Especially Bonnie, because this whole book is...
I read them without Magician's Nephew and Horseman's Blood.
Okay.
Hi everybody, welcome to the first ever episode of Knights at the Round Table. Today we're going to be discussing the book Oversea Under Stone by Susan Cooper. It's a book about 3 children on holiday in Cornwall who find a map in the attic of the house they're renting. And that sets them on a cat and mouse chase with the forces of evil, with only their wits and their mysterious great uncle for help. I thought we should start off with general impressions of the book, so I'm going to hand over to Jasmine.
I love the book, but I mean, YA books are very much my thing. I never really graduated to reading adult books, mostly because they were boring and mostly depressing, and people didn't win very often. And I like a book where, you know, the hero doesn't get killed off. And so this book was very, very awesome for me in that sense. Not to say it didn't have its drawbacks, but it was very similar to a lot of my favorite books. So I liked that about it. I liked the adventure. At one point I got too stressed out and punched my sister, and I was forced to stop reading for a little while. Yeah, I hit you too, but I hit her first. I hit her at a different part. I get stressed out by books easily, and when, you know, children are running away, and it was the description of, you know, as he's running away, and it was so vividly worded that it made my leg muscles hurt, and I was like, I can't do this anymore, and I started freaking out. So I liked that. I could identify with a lot of it, a lot of the characters, and it was a fun read. And a fast read, which always makes me feel super accomplished. And I'm like, yeah, look how fast I read that.
Your turn.
I'm gonna disagree a little. I usually read young adult also, but I found it a little slow, and it really showed its age. It's a book that I would have really loved when I was in 1st grade or 2nd grade, and I would have kept it forever for nostalgia reasons. But compared to more modern versions of the same story, it's kind of slow.
I do agree with. I feel like it picked up a lot about halfway through.
Oh yeah.
Like there was I was kind of doing that same thing, kind of reading at a leisurely pace, because it was a leisurely book. Jane goes and visits the vicar. The boys go on a boat, la 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 la, dawdling along, and then it was from that chase scene where Simon's running away from them that it just, like, after that it picked up so much, and I was like, where did this come from? Where was this 3 chapters ago?
Actually, more on the nostalgia thing, I loved this book, but I read this book first when I was 9. And as a 9-year-old, it was the most amazing story ever. And so I think reading it now as an adult, it brought back all the nostalgia, and the reason why I loved it so much as a kid just sort of jumped in, and I'm kind of biased that way, I guess. So I thought the book was amazing.
Well, I think the nostalgia worked for me too, in that I hadn't read this one, but I have another book by Susan Cooper that I love, and a lot of other books, you know, boys and girls at mysterious house in England find like things behind their wardrobe. It played to a lot of that has been prevalent in so many other books. But I mean, I do think it definitely showed its age, and it's just there's one aspect of it that really bothered me, but that bothers me in all books like this, which is, I call it Susan syndrome. Because there are 2 series that I love. There's Narnia, and there's the Swallows and Amazons books by Arthur Ransom. I don't know if you guys have read those.
No, I haven't.
But in both cases, there are 4 children. In both cases, the second child is a girl named Susan, and in both cases, Susan is the downer. She's the wimpy one. She's the one who's always saying, I don't want to do this. This is too dangerous. Let's go back. And I feel like Jane really, really suffered from Susan syndrome, and she became that girl. And that always bugged me when I was a kid, because it was like, I couldn't identify with that character. I just couldn't. And I was like, I was always identifying with the boy characters, who were the ones who were always, you know, keen to go and have the adventures, and the girl just kind of got caught up with them, and that irks me a little that Jane became a Susan. I mean,
Yeah, she was fine for the first half of the book. She was kind of reticent, but after that,
yeah. I mean, not to say that she didn't have her moments, but they were never moments that she wanted to have. It was always because she kind of was going along with the boys.
Yeah. That jumped out at me now. It didn't when I was back then. I didn't think anything of it when I was 9 years old.
No?
That said, when I was 9 years old, I was totally Barney.
Well, so this is my point. You can identify with the male characters
the boys.
because they're more...
I think Barney was probably the only character, other than maybe the villain, who was well fleshed out and well described
Yes.
throughout the novel. The others I sort of found two-dimensional.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
did find that Barney was pretty much the main character of the story.
Yeah, he
For
was.
me.
But he definitely was. But this is. I'm the oldest child in my family, and this is the other thing that always bothers me is that it's always the youngest.
Oh, yeah.
Or the youngest too. And so I never had a girl I could identify with. I never had an oldest sibling I could identify with. So it's like, and it just, Simon had one moment where I was like, there it is. There's a little bit of like the oldest sibling characteristic that I can identify with when he didn't want Barney to be the first one going into the cave. And the only reason he let him was because if it gets narrow, Barney's the smallest, he'll be able to get through. He has a better chance of getting farther. And then I was like, oh, but Simon's reluctance to let Barney go first because it was going to be dangerous, there was like, okay, there's a little moment, but that was the only one.
Really?
The rest of the
Not
time-
when he was like, I'm the leader of this expedition and you'll call me sir?
That's a different kind of oldest sibling. I mean, there is, but I mean, that's always how the oldest siblings are portrayed,
Oh yeah, that's
right? As like,
The next best thing to the parents,
Yeah.
which no one ever wants to talk to.
yeah, exactly. And it was the part right before Barney gets kidnapped, when Simon and Jane are doing something, they're going to the house and Barney's going up the hill. And that just, I was like, that was really where I was like, no, you don't let the youngest wander off by themselves to do something dangerous. You don't. You just don't. You go do it. The youngest two can stick together because then they'll be slightly safer. I mean, it's not a good, at least he was, opposed to the idea of them splitting up at all. And I was like, you shouldn't split up because that's just straight out stupid. But if you're gonna have to, no, even as a kid, I mean, I was smarter than that. Come on.
Splitting up was scary as a kid.
Yeah.
Really scary.
Really?
If you were in a group of friends, especially if it was dark or someone was chasing you,
You
or
knew
there
the
was some
forces
kind
of
of
evil
animal.
were out there trying to get what you had.
But
You didn't fight the forces of evil?
No, I actually quite liked going off on my own because other people were annoying.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
other people were annoying, but siblings you had to stick with. And you had to look after. And I'm like, really? You're letting
he had
Barney
the
go off?
dog.
Yeah, he had Rufus.
The completely useless dog.
He wasn't
No, the
completely
dog
useless.
sleeps
Yes,
in
he
the
did.
end.
And also found the chimney.
Yeah, the dog was
That's
actually...
true.
There was some foreshadowing in that, by the way, when Barney said, just you wait, I'll bet he'll be useful. I read that line again after having read the book and I was like, hee, foreshadow.
Of course he's going to be useful. But yeah, there were just some things that I could imagine being really, really bitter about if I'd read it when I was younger. Like, of course the youngest one is like the one who has the hero moments and the one who's friends with the dog and all this stuff. I'm like, the oldest doesn't get to do anything, ever. It's just kind of depressing. It's like,
I don't know, Simon was pretty heroic at the end. Throwing the...
He played keep away with a villain.
yeah, but even so,
Yeah,
it was
with
Barney who started that.
Yeah.
The running was.
The
Very
running,
impressive.
the running was heroic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's true. Yeah, when he was being chased by Bill.
yeah. Anyways, that's just my opinion. It's frustrating to me that there are so few YA books that have good girls or good oldest siblings. Not to say that, I mean, I love the characters anyway, but I'm just looking for that little extra effort on those fronts. I just think of something. I'm gonna have to write something. It's never gonna happen.
I really, really, really liked, speaking of characters, Mary, Great Uncle Mary.
Yes.
But I found him so very much Gandalf-esque. Particularly Gandalf from The Hobbit, when he kept disappearing all the time.
Well, and I was also I think Gandalf in The Hobbit
outside
slash
of me.
like Order of the Phoenix Dumbledore.
Yeah, always on the periphery, kind of, but never involved in the adventure.
It's
And deciding, yes, you children can do this.
It's a trap I've noticed in most young adult novels. The author either thinks that the kids can't do it alone, or they want that wise old push you in a direction person and then realize, oh, wait a second, they can do everything on their own. Why do we have the adult? Let's send them away. It feels like that in a lot of novels. That's why the kids are always afraid to tell the parents.
To be fair though, in this one there is a good reason why he's running off.
Yes.
Acting as the red herring for...
That is a good reason.
Yeah.
But it still feels like
It's
he
still
could have
well
been
used
there
trope.
as a like tongue-in-cheek mentioning things and just directing them without being directly involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they did kind of, he got brought into it and then...
He sort of took over until you had to get rid of him.
Yeah. I don't know, he was more useful than
Than Gandalf in The Hobbit.
anybody. A stick is more useful than Gandalf in The Hobbit. Let's be honest, Gandalf in The Hobbit was a tool. But, I don't know, then just a lot of other characters. I mean, I think it was just the way it was written, and a lot of it reminded me of Narnia, and so what I'm thinking of is he was a lot more useful than the professor in Narnia.
That's true. See, that other than the children and the involvement of a wardrobe somehow, I didn't get the whole Narnia.
The style reminded me of Narnia.
The style of writing?
Yeah, the style of writing.
Okay, that might be just like the thing of the age though.
Yeah, well, it's a style that died after that for a while. Because people started babying children, young adult, and started using smaller and smaller language.
Yes,
And
that
then they
really
should
ticks
read-
me off about young adult books is how condescending they can be towards young people. Young
Wasn't-
people are actually very clever.
It wasn't until about 10 years ago that they started, again, using regular language.
A vocabulary.
The book had some strengths and some weaknesses. Mostly it didn't explain everything. So the evil was just evil. It wasn't specified that it was the devil or Morgana or
Right.
some alien force or something. It was
Which
the vague
made
evil.
it much more frightening, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. When
Yeah.
you don't know something. But it's something that doesn't happen very often in young adult books.
Yeah.
It's always told directly to you in some narrative right at the beginning. The other thing was the cup.
Oh yeah.
We have no idea what it was for, other than they had to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's good, because it wasn't important.
Yeah.
We didn't need 100 Tolkien-esque pages describing the history of the cup and who held it.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I haven't read the rest of the books, have you?
Yes, I have.
And do you ever find out more about the
No.
evil
Nope.
or anything?
Nope. And the Drew children make a cameo in one of the books, but that's it. This is it for the story for them, which is disappointing because
Yeah.
I really wanted to see more about the Drew children, especially Barney, because this whole book gave the impression that Barney might have been like
Important.
really, really, really
Yeah.
important, and it turns out not so much.
So the rest of the books have very little to do with...
Yeah, from what I remember, it's been a while since I've read them, but the rest of the books have very
See,
little to do with
just
it.
That's
on that kind of kills my interest in the rest of the book.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, sorry.
Which I know is, I know it's a bad thing, because I feel like there should be enough in that story to make me want to keep reading them to find out more what happens, but it just
If they skip to something completely different.
kind of doesn't. Like, at least with, the two books in the Narnia series, I know we keep going back to this, but the two that I didn't get us into, The Magician's Nephew and The Horse and His Boy, because they had nothing to do with any characters in the rest of them. At least they had the progression, the 4 Pevensies in the first one, or in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, 4 Pevensies in Prince Caspian, and then 2 and a cousin in...
What order did you read them in?
I read them without Magician's Nephew and Horse and His Boy.
Okay, I read them starting with Magician's Nephew.
Oh, okay.
And I loved it. It felt very much like this book, even
Yeah.
though it was written, I think, much later. Because I think it was the last one that Lewis
Really
wrote. And I really liked the idea of 2 people just exploring.
Mm-hmm.
The horse one was probably
Well, because it didn't fit
one of the
into
most boring
anything.
books I've ever read.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the reason
Yeah.
Oversea on a Stone is a brilliant book as a standalone. I don't know what it has to do with the rest of the Darkness is Rising series.
Well, that's
This is based on,
frustrating.
yeah, okay,
It's
really
really
frustrating.
frustrating.
this is based on what I remember. It's been a long time since I've read the series, but from what I remember, the Drew children don't have much else to do with.
is there at least a continuation of the Arthur myth?
Sort of, yes. As in it's
Sort of.
alluded to, but they never touch on the importance of the chalice that was found, or...
And you never find out what was on that second manuscript?
No.
Oh, that
Oh.
that drives me crazy.
Yeah.
That really.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You just saved me so much frustration.
Well, see, now everybody's going to yell at me because I'm wrong, but from what I remember, no. And I remember being very disappointed with the rest of the series because I wanted more Barney.
Fan
Barney
fiction
was
time.
awesome. Yeah, really.
Now I'm depressed.
I'm good for that.
Oh, the other thing that I was going to say that has nothing to do with anything we've been talking about, but one of my favorite lines in the book that stood out after I'd finished it, and then, which was good, 'cause I was trying to remember things that I found interesting, and then I had to go back and find this one line, was when they're talking to Great Uncle Mary that first time when they show him the manuscript and they're going through the long chapter where he's actually important. And they have that line about what once upon a time means. I really, really loved that line. It was, I don't know,
It was something that happened once, but...
that was true once, but people don't remember.
Or they've talked about it for too long and they don't remember really what happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I just really like that because for whatever reason, I never really thought about what once upon a time meant before. So that was kind of a nice thought.
Yes.
I liked that.
I did like that.
And the only other thing that I thought was funny, just one of my personal favorite Susan Cooper book is called King of Shadows. And it's about a boy who, through a series of plagues, falls back in time and meets William Shakespeare, and they have a lovely time performing Midsummer Night's Dream. It's a fantastic book. I'm going to put it on the list for this one of these days. But I just thought the end, in the epilogue, when Barney has that moment of realization about Mary's name,
Great Uncle Mary.
It was one of those moments that I was like, oh my god, everything makes so much sense.
Yes.
And then my next thought was it's almost identical to a moment at the end of King of Shadows when there's a similar name that suddenly makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah.
So I thought that was kind of fun.
One of my favorite things, and it's the geekiest thing ever, was the main villain's name, Mr. Hastings. I like it so much because the Cornishman who hid the chalice was fleeing the Normans.
Oh my god.
The Battle of Hastings. As soon as I read that name, I was like, oh my god, this is hilarious. Sorry to be so historically geeky, but it tickled me.
I didn't even think that.
I loved it
Way
so
over my
much.
head.
That's hilarious.
Because the manuscript that they had originally found was written by the Cornishman who was fleeing to Ireland, right? And it was written at the time something like 900 years ago, which would be the 11th century, which was the invasion of Britain by the
1066 and all that.
1066, yes, at the Battle of Hastings. So yeah, that tickled me. I really enjoyed that.
That's pretty awesome. I had not thought of that. I like that point. That makes me happy.
Excellent. Did everybody say what they wanted to say?
Yeah, I complained about oldest children and girls, and that's all I got.
I said my piece about the good and the bad and slightly boring.
It's like...
I wish I could have started in the middle. Like, had that one chapter with the great uncle and then to the middle.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh.
Well,
Oh, that's the other thing about youngest children. I'm a youngest child. Barney says that the cook is a bad guy.
And then nobody
Continuously,
listens to
nobody
him. And that's-
listens to him.
Spoiler alert, by the way.
Sorry,
Yeah.
spoiler. I think that should have been like right at the beginning of the spoiler alert.
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. But yeah, the thing that bugs me about oldest children is they never believe the youngest one, you know.
And they're always
right.
But only if the oldest doesn't believe them. If the oldest does believe them, then they're wrong.
Right. And then the next time when they're right, the oldest says, well, you were wrong last time. It's like every time. Every time. It just,
Oldest child grumbles. Okay, so if you were to give this book a rating out of 5?
4.
4?
3.
3? Okay, I gave it a 5 because I think it's the nostalgia thing kicking in. Because I remember I loved this book so much. I'm fairly certain this book started my obsession with Celtic studies at 9 years old.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah, might have done it.
These things happen. I mean, Swallows and Amazon started my obsession with sailing. Books that you read when you're a kid have a really powerful impact on the rest of your life.
Yeah, really. I should have read more kids' books.
Yeah, you should have. I've been telling you this for ages. It's
too late now. Now when I read them, they're silly. It's true.
I wonder what you'd think of this one if you'd read it now, like I did.
Yeah, I wonder that too. We'll never know.
Probably for the best, this way you can enjoy it.
Yeah, maybe.
Don't look through with a haze of nostalgia.
Yeah. I love the nostalgia. Nostalgia just, it makes so much better. That was so
It makes the
annoying.
whole 80s way much better for movies.
Yes, sort of. Depending on the movie.
Makes it more bearable.
It makes it...
Better drinking games?
There we go. Better drinking games. Okay. So I think since we've covered everything, we'll wrap it up. If you agree or disagree with anything that we've said about this book, leave a note in the comments. You can also discuss the book on our Goodreads.com book club. Next week, we will be discussing a film, Sucker Punch. So if you want to join in the discussion, watch Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch? No, Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch before we upload the episode next Monday. 2 weeks from now, we'll be discussing a book again, and I asked for suggestions we have in the bowl, because who wants to pick one?
After you.
So we will be reading The Real Story by Stephen R. Donaldson for the next book episode. It's a science fiction, Into the Gap conflict, in case any of you were wondering.
Sounds exciting.
Awesome.
I'm ready.
Bye. That's it.
That's it.
Good as gold.